What's up, and welcome back to another episode of the Kinda Funny Gamescast. Of course, I'm Tim Geddes, and I am joined by the new face of video games, Blessing Adeoye Jr.
What's up, Tim?
Nothing much, Bless. Nothing much at all. Rounding out the group today, we have the Big Daddy himself, Greg Miller.
Altman be praised.
Exactly. That's what they say. That's what they do say. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm really good. Really excited for this episode, Greg.
Me too.
Review season's here, Bless. Can I get some sniffs?
Yeah,
All the fog juice.
I can't sniff any harder than this. I'm busy.
But yeah, reviews are about to pop off. Like I think that on both the movie side and the game side, I think there's probably going to be more review episodes than episodes that aren't about reviews for this year, right? Like I feel like there's probably more games that Kinda Funny is going to review this year than in any year prior.
Damn.
Wow.
Right? That sounds right.
That sounds right. That sounds right.
Yeah.
There's a lot of great games.
2020 popped off because there was all the, like that March happened. There was Doom. There was Animal Crossing. There was Ori right before. Like there was a lot of things back to back to back. But then I feel like later in that year, it kind of got a little slower. Here, it's like, we're already going. You know what I mean?
We're in the thick of it. Forspoken's already here. Dead Space today. PlayStation VR's coming up. You can't get away.
Exactly. And so, of course, we have the Kinda Funny Gamescast. We have PS I Love You XOXO. We have Kinda Funny Xcast. We're going to be divvying up the games to be reviewed depending on the cast and who should be on and all that. So stay tuned to all of those shows. Of course, you can watch them on youtube.com/kindafunnygames. You can get all of them as podcasts by searching your favorite podcast service for the name of the show. Will be right there for you. If you just look for Kinda Funny, there's going to be a whole bunch of fun stuff. If you like any nerd culture thing, chances are we have a show about it. Maybe multiple shows. So please go subscribe to all those feeds. It would mean a lot to me personally. But what would mean even more is your hard-earned money. You can go to patreon.com/kindafunny or Kinda Funny Games to get the shows live as we record them and to get so much bonus content. So many great shows like Kinda Feudy. You also get it all ad-free, which is like the most excellent part of the entire situation that we have going for you. And that is something that is known very well by our Patreon producers, Jay Kolbs, Nathan Lamoth, Monica Boomenlog, DJ Kanto on Twitch, Trent Barry, James Hastings, Colin Huguenel, and Casey Andrew. If you don't have a buck to toss our way, that's totally cool. When you're out on the Epic Game Store, use our Epic creator code, Kinda Funny. We'll be right there for you, helping out. What's happening here?
Show some respect to the Kinda Funny games producer, Delaney Twining.
Wow.
All right?
Wow.
Oh,
You're out here giving Monica Boomenlog and her Kinda Funny brethren all this. Okay, where's Delaney Twining's moment? Our one producer on the game side.
I have totally failed you. Great.
I knew something was off. I was like, what? I'm like, who are these people?
Who
are these people?
Jay Cole, stop subscribing to Kinda Funny shows and subscribe to Kinda Funny game shows.
Well, I really.
When you started saying J. Cole, also, I thought you were going to say J. Cole, and I was like, oh, Jermaine?
Wow.
Like, Jermaine
He's
Cole?
out
Oh,
here.
man.
Delaney Twining, I apologize for that. But thank you for your support. And hey, shout out to all the Kinda Funny Patreon producers. We appreciate you as well. Housekeeping for you. There's just been a ton of great stuff. I was already getting into it, but like we've been releasing a lot of great content already in 2023. We have an episode of The Blessing Show that if you haven't seen, you should definitely check out. We have more of that on the way this year thanks to your support over on Patreon. The Forspoken review is on PS I Love You, XOXO. And Kinda Funny Games Daily has been kind of popping off recently too. Like I feel like we've been doing a real good job covering some of the harder hitting stories that have been going on. So even today's episode was great. Greg totally went off. So check that out. Kinda Funny Games Daily, everybody. But enough about all of that. Today we're reviewing a new game, or should I say an old game? Or maybe it's a new old game. Dead Space, everybody. Greg Miller was our lead reviewer on this. Before we get into it though, Greg, I have one question for you. Did you review Dead Space?
No, I did not review Dead Space, the original IGN. Jeff Haynes did. I played alongside him, and then I came on to review Dead Space 2.
Okay. Cool.
But I was there. I was there. Me and Jeff, we put our heads together back at IGN in the old days about 2008's Dead Space.
Did you get to review Dead Space 3?
No, thank God. I did not like
So they got to remake Dead Space 3, and then you'll be able to get the trifecta.
Yeah, exactly. It's this weird like hodgepodge of like getting it back together. Yeah. I mean, I talked about it in the same way probably, but yeah.
Well, I have a lot of questions about Dead Space, the franchise as a whole and everything, but I need to know, Greg Miller, what did you think about the Dead Space 2023 remake?
So yeah, I love Dead Space 2008. I love Dead Space as a franchise. I enjoyed it quite a bit in its heyday. Was sad to see it go, and was happy, if not trepidatious, to see it announced here as a remake for this 2023 version of Dead Space. And the good news is that EA Motive did not screw this up. This is a great game. This is a worthy remake, spiritual successor, whatever you want to call it. It's a great reintroduction to Dead Space. It's a fun time if you've played it before. I think it'll be even more fun if you've never played it before. I do think, on the kind of funny scale, like I'm saying, it's great. That's a 4 out of 5 for us. I think a few choices hold it back from being amazing. I wasn't amazed playing it. That might be both the fact that I've played it before and I know it pretty well. I think it's more the fact that you're remaking an old game, and in doing that, you want to be true to what Dead Space was, and of course, add in new additions, new things. This game's chock full of new things. It's gorgeous. There's a whole bunch of stuff we're going to talk about. But in some places, I think it very much, to its detriment, stays with what Dead Space was in 2008, when it would have been nicer maybe to move it forward a bit. But I don't want to make it sound like I'm being negative. I had a blast playing Dead Space. I have started my New Game Plus run. I hope to play more of it, but it is review season. We'll see if I get back to it and actually can platinum it maybe one day.
Plus, did you play it all yet?
Not really. I played about 30 minutes, so I'm not that far into it yet. But for the 30 minutes I played, it's been really cool, right? I've been wanting to jump in and play more. The things that immediately struck me were, one, upon booting it up, for me as somebody who's not played much of the original Dead Space, actually getting control and moving around and moving the camera around, immediately it felt like a PS3 game, and not really a bad way, right? Just in the ways of like, oh yeah, like the camera motion feels a bit PS3-ish, the way like looking around the environment, walking around the environment kind of felt that way. But getting a little bit further into it, looking around, I was like, oh man, for a game that originally was a PS3 game, they did such a great job of refurbishing everything and making it actually look modern and making it actually...
Well, remember, this is a remake. This is from the ground up. So, like, no, I want to make sure... I know it's always very confusing for a remaster or remake. So before we get going, I want people to understand that, like, they started from a blank slate and redid it, but paying homage to everything.
Exactly, but it feels like a remake in a similar vein of Blue Point's Shadow of the Colossus.
That's exactly what it is. Plus.
Yeah,
where that's the closest analog there is.
Exactly, where you pick it up and it is, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, this feels one for one like the original game in terms of how it moves, how it controls, how it's laid out, all that stuff, but it looks beautiful and it really does feel and present like a modern video game. And so playing through it, there are very few places so far where I'm like, oh man, this is weird. Like there are things like the save system where immediately I was like, oh, this is a PS3 save system, just in the ways of like you have to walk up to the station and then click save and then do
this giant ridiculous camera on the wall that you open up to save your game.
Yeah, exactly. But so far I'm pretty impressed by it.
Yeah.
Tim, you've been playing. What do you think?
I am. I'm about halfway through this. I love the original Dead Space a lot, and we talk about it a lot on this show, on these shows, as being one of the best representations of modern classics, I would say. Like, I think that Dead Space is such a great new IP that came out during that generation that I think really kind of defined what that era of games even could be. That was probably, I would say, the flagship horror title of that gen, right? Where obviously Resident Evil on the PS1, there was that, then RE4 on GameCube and during that generation. But to have this new, fresh idea that at the time was amazing, that I feel like without having I didn't play Dead Space, the original, since I first played it, but I would imagine that playing it would actually hold up more because the PS3 generation is not the PS2 or PS1. Like, I feel like it is a bit more, okay, this is where modern games kind of started. Like, you look at Uncharted, I think would be a great example of like the whole the way that third-person shooters look and feel, even where the camera is. Gears of War being another great example. I think that Dead Space took that concept and applied it to a Metroidvania in space. Well, Metroid's already there, but with the horror elements, and it is such an amazing melding of these concepts and ideas that work, and they add up to be something that I think is even stronger than just the parts. I am absolutely loving it so far, and I think that this remake is something that I'm like, I have never realized how much of a Metroidvania this is. This feels like playing Super Metroid in 3D, but if Nintendo would like go there a little bit more, if they were like, oh yeah, but it's actually going to be scary. Metroid's scary when you think about it. Like, you are alone in space, there's aliens, things are popping up and whatever, but it's Nintendo, so they never go too far with it. This is like, no, we're going to go all out. It's going to be scary as hell. And even though I've played it before, I know where the jump scares are, there is just a level of ambiance that they have once again committed to and nailed.
Sure.
But it has that beautiful next-gen wrapper around it that it looks great. It sounds great. And the thing that I'm most blown away by, and I can't wait to keep talking to you about this, Greg, because I know you played a little bit of the original Dead Space to compare, is I struggle to identify, was it always this good? Did it always play this well? All this stuff. Because like I'm like, this is even better than I remember it, but it's how I remember it. And that's that hard thing to play with nostalgia.
Glasses,
yeah.
Right. And I think that's what's interesting about this. I feel like, honestly, there should be almost 2 reviews inside this Gamescast about it. Same score, 4 out of 5. Great game. But the idea of let's talk about it in the context of it being a remake and what it means to Dead Space and where we are with that. And then also just a standalone game kind of thing. We won't actually break them up that way, but I think I'm going to personally in my head go back and forth between it a lot. Yeah, not only did I go back, and I wish I had had more time leading up to this. Initially, you noodle that, I'll play Dead Space. I'll play it on Xbox Game Pass right before the new one comes out. And of course, there's a million other reviews, so I never actually do that. So I, of course, had played Dead Space in 2008 and adored it and yada, yada, yada. And I think I've played it once since then. For this, was watching a bunch of a full playthrough off YouTube. And then, I was popping into the gameplay lab today to go compare and contrast a few different things from the opening, let alone, of course, with the power of the Xbox. I'm playing on Mike's profile, and he's got a save in there from however many years ago he was playing the original Dead Space, multiple hours in. The long and short of it is, what I think will work against Dead Space Remake to its, what'll work against it and is a shame is that people are going to pick it up and be like, oh yeah, this is Dead Space. And have those rose-tinted glasses. This is what it looked like. This is what it plays like, blah, 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 blah. And it's when you go back and play the original Dead Space and go through like, oh, wow, this is the same room, but they put so much more detail into it. There's so much more going on. Not even in terms of like lighting and shadows. I just mean making it feel real. And so there is that part to it. And to your point, Bless, from earlier on, right? Like, even though this is a remake from the ground up, because you're using the same kind of environments you're building and being so faithful, I totally get the camera feeling PS3, the world feeling PS3 around it, right, of what you're doing. I think you owe it to yourself if you're going to jump in and you haven't played a Dead Space before or haven't played it in a long time to take a look when you get going to really go back and see it. There are these huge jumps in it. They have done so much under the hood to make it better and feel better. To a point you and I were having, right, where Zero G's always been in Dead Space. Flying around, turning off the gravity, and going through these space environments. Of course, you're on the USG Ishimura, a planet cracker. You and a team show up to check out what's going on. All hell's broken loose. There are necromorphs all over, these reanimated corpses. They're turning the crew that they murdered. They are then turning into these necromorphs, and something's going on. And you got to figure it all out. Well, just try to fight for your life, and of course, find your girlfriend Nicole. You go through and get into this and start really experimenting with the world and getting deeper and deeper into it. And again, to compare and contrast and get back into it, to go back to something like Zero G on this thing, you had that question from me early on of like, yo, Zero G's dope as fuck. Was it always this way? Like, where you're flying around being Iron Man, free control? And I was like, oh, yeah, totally. Well, I'm pretty sure it was. And I had to go look into it. And it's like, oh, no, it wasn't. It was in Dead Space 2, and it was in Dead Space 3, and they're bringing that back here. In the original Dead Space, it was, you're on one thing, and you look up, and you can jump to that. And you can jump to that, and you can go. It wasn't until Dead Space 2 that they added in basically the Iron Man you're flying around doing. That's here, right? They've taken that and put that into this version of the game. The original Dead Space.
And then, just to cut you off there, with that, it took what I remember being a very frustrating moment from the first game, and in this one made it a very fun and rewarding and epic moment. Like, it was like very, very, very cool to have that, the earliest bit of that, and be like, whoa, like it looks so cool, and the gameplay was more fun than it used to be, so it adds up to just being a better experience.
Oh, 100%. This is something I think we talked about with crap, what was the other remaster we did recently? The Last of Us Part 1, remake, whatever. But we're like, oh, this is the definitive way to play Last of Us. I think this is the definitive way to play Dead Space, right? Like, it is the modern way. It is the modern sensibilities in a lot of ways and not. But I mean, like, similar to something, if we really want to get lost in a timeline, Resident Evil 2 remake. How great the map was in that, right? How good the map is in Dead Space Remake here, 2023. And to go back and play Dead Space 2008 and be like, it wasn't a horrible map, but it wasn't nearly as good. It was way clunkier than what this is. This is a more streamlined version, right? They've gone through and done it. They've added in a bunch of things to make it more Metroidvania in this one, right? Like, there's security clearances this time around. So there's doors and chests that are locked behind, 1, 2, 3 clearances, and then a master one. That wasn't in the original Dead Space. So
that blows my mind.
Yeah.
Because, again, I haven't played the game for a decade, but I would have thought that was in it. Like, playing it feels authentic to what Dead Space and the experience of Dead Space is, and I think that's what wows me the most. And me bringing up all the Super Metroid stuff, it's funny that seems like, I guess a lot of what I'm touching on is new. But the map is the same. The layout is the same. And there can be frustrating moments. Maybe not frustrating. That's not even the right word. There are moments where you can kind of see behind the curtain and see how things are made, where you're like, all right, this is a loading screen. And we're so used to the corridors and stuff, but it's like, all right, cool, I'm on this gondola. All right. And like you kind of dread having to get on the goddamn gondola because you know it's going to be like, all right, this is going to take me at least a minute to get where I'm trying to go. I know I'm trying to go, blah, blah, blah. You make a mistake. Oh, I got to go back. Like that whole thing. Right. But there's something to the design of the ship that really does lend itself to you understanding, oh, I know where to go. I'm familiar with this area. I know that's where my goal is. I know exactly how to get there. I know a shortcut. I can get through that this way, whatever. And I don't know if the original had this, but this game has the hit R3 and it has the scanner thing.
That was in the original.
Tell you where to go. And it's just like,
But I was sorry to double back on that. Yeah, because I want to compliment Dead Space 2023 on this again with the security clearances things. It feels more rewarding to get off the beaten path. They've added in side missions. There's little things going on to go find, and it's audio logs and text stuff that you're going through and doing it. But it is in a way that, I think Dead Space has always been great at telling you where to go by, hitting R3 and having the pulse line chase off to your objective or whatever, which of course is built into your rig, this mechanical suit you're wearing. So that's the whole reason. Back in the day, revolutionary, right? That there was no HUD. Your health is on your spine, in the suit. Same with your stasis, which is your ability to slow down time, right? And then your telekinesis to grab stuff is unending resource. And then of course, if you want to go into your inventory and stuff, it projects off of your outfit, so Isaac would see it in his real world or whatever. Brilliant stuff there.
It's brilliant
back then and here, but it's that idea of like, I feel. With the security clearance and the improved map, I was even more like, okay, yeah, this is the main hub. I've been in this room before. I know where I'm at, and I know that I went that way. You double back, you open a door, you realize where you were, you see how they connect. Okay, you make the mental note that there was a chest back there that was level 2. You get level 2 later on. You're like, I'm going to come back and check on that kind of thing. Like, it's very interesting playing this game in 2023. For me, Greg Miller, having played Resident Evil 2 Remake, I should say, because of course I didn't like Resident Evil 2's controls or any of the Resident Evil controls back in the day, so I never played those as contemporaries. Playing Dead Space 2023 after Resident Evil 2 Remake makes me go, man, Dead Space is so Resident Evil, right? In the way it feels, controls, which also then, let's keep the timeline even more fucked up, makes so much sense because when Callisto Protocol came out, Glenn Schofield, of course, came over here and did content with us, and Glenn, of course, made Dead Space, and so he talked about, on that show, playing Resident Evil and being like, when we made Dead Space, I was like, I want to be able to move and shoot. I don't want to play. It's like, you see all that so clearly this time around in the way this game plays, looks, and feels in the map. And on top of that, I don't think I can go far enough to talk about may sound weird, what a joy it is to play. You were talking about, like, did it always feel this good? Of course, I don't think Dead Space always felt that good in 2008. There were those pieces that were friction points in the moment. I don't know if we dinged them that hard back in the day, but like you look back and it's like, you think about pulling the marker around, you think about like some of the
Chapter 8 thing.
Exactly, right? I didn't have those here. And I felt like this game was great to play throughout. I do think it'll be interesting to watch reactions. I, of course, in the Dead Space lore of Greg Millerness, right? I'm the Goldilocks that like Dead Space 2 more than Dead Space 1. I like feeling empowered in Dead Space 2. Dead Space 2, I always felt like Isaac, spoilers, wakes up and has to go fight all these things, and he's done it before. He'll do it again. Let's fuck him up. And people are like, oh, it's too actiony. I like a survival horror game. Dead Space 1 in 2008 was that game for me of every bullet fucking counts. Shit. The objective's on the other side of that, but there's a necromorph down, but I only have one thing. So even if I go stomp on him, how am I going to blah, 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 blah? I always, and the game does a good job of it here too. I always felt like when I was getting down to my last ammo, I would then cross the finish line, and somehow they always timed it out well to make it happen, right? That happens here too, but again, maybe it's the fact that I'm just replaying this game, and in many respects, it is different, obviously. But I felt like a badass playing this. And again, I don't know if it's me maturing as a gamer, just not knowing in 2008, not knowing what was around the corner, not knowing how to do this. But this time around, like, especially with the DualSense Edge, which I'm using those back paddle boys like Andy said I would, like, people are, necromorphs are coming. And of course, if you've never played a Dead Space, know anything about it, rather than shoot them in the head, you need to shoot off their limbs to kill necromorphs. So, I'm blasting by the legs, drop them, blast off the arm, telekinesis, grab the arm, shoot it back into the dude, stasis these guys over there. Like, I'm managing the battlefield way better than I felt I did in Dead Space 1 on my initial playthrough. But I guess that makes sense. It's just weird to come back to something. But I guess, again, Callisto Protocol, Dead Space, a little bit of Dead Space 3 before I was like, this game sucks. Dead Space 2, Dead Space 1. Like, I know the franchise, I know the rules, and I feel empowered in this.
Yeah, I mean, everything you're saying, I'm right there with. I think that they nailed the vibe of it so much of like, this is a video game-ass video game, and it kind of created a lot of those video game tropes in itself. And if not created, nailed them and really kind of defined what it could be. Like you're talking about the no HUD, his suit kind of being your health bar. You see it on him. You see everything pop up. The way that the save system is integrated into it all, the workbenches for upgrading and like all that. Some of it feels a little bit like, I would like the save stuff I don't really need here. It's kind of weird. There is an autosave feature in this game, and I will say that is the biggest criticism I have is it's not good. There's been at least 3 times now where the autosave happens as I'm getting the death strike on myself, and it goes beep, and I die, and it pops back beep, and then I die, and it comes back, and I'm just like in this loop of being dead, and I have to just kind of experiment with angles of what way
from it,
to move to just get away, and I'm like, this doesn't seem ideal. But that to me is the one major like, this is worse. This is not a good feature. Like they should have worked on this a little differently, because otherwise, I feel like when we talk about Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. It was hard to explain that game when it first came out because it did so much right. Not a perfect game by any means, but it did so much right in the sense of like, oh, it has elements of Uncharted and Souls-likes and Metroid Prime, and it's all wrapped in this beautiful Star Wars story, and it just works, and it sounds and feels authentically Star Wars. I feel like with Dead Space, we can talk about a ton of different genres, a ton of different amazing classic games, and this just does so many of those elements right. It might not have done them first, but it does them right, and it adds up to be a really great, unique experience that you bringing up Resident Evil 2 Remake. It is comparable in the sense of how wowed I am playing it, where it's like every room to room and just going through feels like it was designed for you to have fun with, in the sense of Resident Evil 2 kind of being like, look, every hallway you're in is going to be just as scary as the last. And because the lighting system was so good of the RE engine and all that, it is going to up the ante of what that experience was for you back on PlayStation, what you remember of it, but also even more. Playing this Dead Space game, using your weapon and just switching between the different angles of how it's going to cut off the necromorphs. Sure. I'm like, this is fucking brilliant fun. This is a video game, man. Like they have a dope looking character. They have dope looking weapons that are fun to use, using the different status effects and all that. It's like, I think what you're talking about, like now you're just like, you're running through and you feel like a badass. I think it's just because video games have now used Dead Space as a template in the way that I'm talking about Dead Space grabbing from other things that we're just used to these physical powers. Like, I mean, and I know it wasn't first Half-Life 2 even, right? Like with the gravity gun and all of that. But there's something about the toolbox of toys you have to play with in Dead Space that just adds up to, I think, just a really rewarding and fun experience. It's fun to upgrade all the things, and I think that
and again to call this out, like it is fun to upgrade, yes, and that's something they've again tweaked. Like if you weren't paying attention, you'd be like, oh yeah, it's the same as before, because you go through the game, you collect these nodes, you go to a workbench, you insert them into your weapon, your suit to make it better. But if you remember, in the original Dead Space, there were blank nodes that you had to connect to get to. So you were just wasting these. Everything has a purpose now. Every node has something. Rather than have the whole skill tree unlocked as well, like you'll find upgrades that you then have to purchase out of the store to put into the thing that then open up more of the tree to make your weapons better and stuff like that. And yeah, there's the suits and everything else. Like they've taken what was already a great game, and I really do think they were like, how can we make everything more fun? What you're talking about, like walking into a room, and this is a room designed to scare you, spook you, give you this jump. You mentioned at the top, but as I've always said with Dead Space, and I even said in our preview, right, one of the things it gets so right is its audio design. And I think that this time around, in 2008 playing it, it was the jump scares, the necromorph busts out of the wall or a vent, or the one I thought was dead pops up. I would say most of my startles from this one came from sound, where it was like you walk into a room and there's an and it sounds like a necromorph, and it obviously is designed to, but it's actually the sprinklers turning on over on the hydroponics. You know what I mean? Or like there's some other, like the way transmission will begin, just the noise like sounds like something. It's
the
not.
Static of it.
And so it's like another thing I would say, depending on, unless you're Tim living in a movie theater with a THX thing, I would wear headphones for this. Like I had such a better, I had a great experience playing off my sound bar, but when I put on my surround sound headphones, it was so much better. The whispers in there.
The whispers, man. The
with you.
3D audio with the whispers, it's unnerving, and it really sets the tone. And like, if you haven't played Dead Space before, it's like there's some weird whisper shit that just constantly happens, and you just hear voices around you, which is like, all right, could this be any scarier? And it's like, I'm really wowed by the fact that this remake is as fun as I expected it to be, and as scary as I wanted it to be. And that is something that like I didn't expect from a remake. And the way that Resident Evil 2, like the Resident Evil games are a bit campier, like just by default. That's just what they are. Their story's goofy, right? Their characters are goofy and they can be over the top and whatever. But Resident Evil 2, because of its lighting, because of its use of water reflections and things, it was genuinely scary. And I love that we can still be genuinely scared by games that scared us a decade plus ago, but put them in a new wrapper, and it's just like there's new context to it all. And I'm just wowed by the world of it all and just how consistent it all is. And like I was saying earlier, like there's moments like the gondola and stuff that like feels weird, and you start to see the video game design of it all. But then there's moments of just the brilliance where you're like, wow, like it's not you're in an elevator because it has to load. They treat it like you're in an elevator because you know the ship and you're on the second level. You need to get down to the first. It all feels like it's a world that exists. Like it feels like getting from point A to point B. The way to do that is not some weird fast travel teleport or whatever. It's like it feels like you're actually traveling through a real space.
That was one of their big things at the preview event Mike and I went to, was the fact they boasted that, you can walk through the entire Ishimura, right? Like it isn't that you're sectioned off into these things that'll, these loads go between it. It is that you exist in the space is real, and you travel throughout it. And I think it's an understated one. And again, if I would have done my homework and played all the way through Dead Space 2008, it might have resonated louder. I do feel like the place is real. I do feel like I'm going through it, but I didn't feel like that was something that like really jumped out at me. Another thing from the preview event they talk about was the intensity director, which is something like they have like 1,200 unique things that can happen or whatever. So like when you play it, it shouldn't be the same. And that's even off of loads, which I did notice, where I would go through a room, pick up resources, nothing happens, go to the boss or whatever, get into a thing, just get jumped, die, come back, try to do the same thing, and that time a necromorph pops up and I had to fight him or something like that. I thought that was an interesting twist as well.
Really cool. I didn't notice that.
Yeah. And one of the, I think for me, in terms of what I was saying earlier, where I think it might be too true or maybe too PS3 or too old school in terms of what it does, things that I found disappointing, I guess. And again, I use it lightly because I highly recommend the game and I love it and do want to play it again on New Game Plus, which it gives you a new suit and there's new collectibles, which if you get all the collectibles, it'll lead to an alternate ending. Like there's a whole bunch of stuff they are doing with New Game Plus, let alone keeping all your stuff from before. But back to the Ishimura and being able to walk through and stuff. For me, I think at points the pacing kind of drags, where it is, of course, like you are on this one big ship. And again, I'm playing it on a review embargo, right? I'm going through trying to get a bunch of stuff done as fast as I can while enjoying the game. It was after a while, just like, and I understand it's a planet cracker. Another reason I love Dead Space 2 so much, right? Where you are in Dead Space 2 was a very varied environment. Like, and there was nothing creepier, I thought, than going to the kids' classrooms on this other, space station you were on. This is through and through, right? A ship designed to crack planets and smelt stuff. So it's like, it kind of all looks the same, I feel at times, which at times when I was like, all right, I feel like I'm in the same hallway. What am I doing? Yada, yada, yada. And then for me, it would be the boss battles as well. Like, they are epic and they are impressive looking, but still, I feel like that's when I'm getting the gameplay to a not dumbed down thing, but a dumbed down thing of what I feel a PS3 boss battle was, which I'm going to sit here and 0G, go left or right, or I'm going to be on the ground and go left or right to dodge the giant tentacles, to shoot the big yellow thing, to get it to the next phase, to dodge the thing, to shoot the yellow thing. It's like, I enjoyed the moment-to-moment necromorph. Now I got the stupid fucking babies I still hate with the goddamn three things coming out of their back that have always been horrible to me. They're there, but I got the running around lizard-looking dude, but I got the regular necromorph, and now I got these big old necromorphs, and I got necromorphs now with stasis on them, and then you play it in New Game Plus, you got these phantom necromorphs that are even tougher. Like, I'm like, damn, you did a great job of moment-to-moment enemies being there, but the payoff to you gotta go fight the really big thing is just like, oh, okay, boom, boom, run here, boom, boom.
Yeah, I do think that with some of the boss encounters, but even also the multi-man melees going on, where it's like you're in the monster closet of multiple enemies in the room with you that you're fighting. that is where the game starts to not feel as modern, where, you know, back in the day, people would talk about the tank controls of RE2. And then even later, it's like, can we, like Metroid Prime, can you move and shoot, or do you need to just be locked as you shoot? And the game feels actiony enough that playing this in 2023, I feel like I need a dodge button. I feel like I need a pushback roll or something, like to function more like Returnal or something. But that's not what the game is. And I think that's where it can kind of like be a little incongruent with like what you expect it to be. Because in those boss fights, if those boss fights were redesigned to have some type of even just like quick move.
Let me tell you about Callisto Protocol.
See, and that was our thing, right? And all our conversations about Callisto, both in the review and then in the spoiler cast with Glenn, the creator of Dead Space, I was like, dude, it's a modern game. Why not have a 180 turn? You know what I mean? Like, I never used it in God of War. Me and Barrett were talking about this on the car ride. He's like, God of War had it, right? I'm like, yeah. He's like, I never used it. I'm like, yeah, because that game was, you pushed forward, I felt. You fought. Whereas this game is, fuck, I need to get distance from you, but I can hear it. You know, the hairs on my neck are standing up because I know something's behind me.
Yeah.
And so it's so annoying to do the slow turn or just the slow run and then try to turn around. It's like, again, I feel like that's such a 2008 thing that they kept here because that's the game, and I get that, but I still want to critique it. But then to get to Callisto, be like, why the fuck didn't you do it? You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's so fascinating listening to this as somebody who, you know, Dead Space 1 is a game that I've been wanting to play forever, and I've been very excited to play with this remake, right? That was why I was excited for the announcement of it. But also as somebody who has played Callisto Protocol, right, and enjoyed my time with Callisto Protocol, I guess I have a couple of questions for you.
Sure.
Going back to, Greg, how you started this with, there are two different ways to review this game, right? Like you can review it just as a video game, just as a modern game, and you can also bring in how well did they achieve this being a remake. I think that brings up two natural comparisons. The first one being to Callisto Protocol, the latest game that tried to be a modern Dead Space, and then also bring up Resident Evil 2 Remake, right? A game that I would say remade a classic survival horror game and knocked it out of the park, right? For me, probably the best remake I've ever played. I guess this can go both ways of what are things that Callisto Protocol and RE2 Remake did on their side that you would have loved to see Dead Space Remake tackle, and then vice versa of are there things that Dead Space Remake did, both as a modern iteration of Dead Space versus Callisto Protocol, or as a modern survival horror game compared to RE2 that you guys enjoyed?
I love it. I love this.
I know that's a lot. That's a lot. I just you guys.
That's real good. I mean, just like I already kind of said this, but I think that one thing I love about what this did is make it way more of a Metroidvania. And I feel like something I enjoyed a lot about the Resident Evil 2 remake is Resident Evil has always been a semi 3D Metroidvania, right? Like there are locked off rooms, you get different like security clearance, for lack of a better term, whatever you want to call it, keys, like all that shit. You can unlock new places, get new weapons, all of that. Very similar structure, right? I think that with Dead Space and with this modern one, because it is all in the one location of the ship, I think that they did a really good job of using the location and having those like locked off sections and stuff. Like I think really leaning into that helped.
My question for you is because Metroidvanias aren't my jam usually. Do you think, are you giving it too much credit as a Metroidvania? Because Metroidvania is, you correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
I went and I couldn't. There's this wall looks weird, and I eventually get a gun that I can blow the hole in the wall, and now that opens up all this new stuff. Whereas with Dead Space, sure, there's the security clearance cards, but they're mostly for just extra shit, like more ammo. But it's usually like, oh, this door is locked. I go to my objective. I get a radio call from somebody who's like, oh, you need to do this. I'll open that door for you. Like,
yeah, Metroidvania. Thank you for calling me out on that. I would say it's more like just playing Metroid Dread not that long ago. This reminds me of Metroid Dread in a lot of ways, where there is that kind of like horror element to it, like the tinge. And
it's like a tense environment that you're exploring and backtracking.
It's very claustrophobic. It's there's backtracking. You're going through areas over and over, and also you're often incentivized to go down the road that you're not necessarily supposed to, because you know something's going to be there. But the funny thing is, sometimes it's not an upgrade; it's an enemy, and it's a jump scare. It's something like for that. That to me is something that the Metroid really shines through.
Sure.
And I think that again, Samus being this like bounty hunter out in space, alone against the aliens, kind of locked down in claustrophobic areas. That is to me what I'm so impressed by Dead Space, having never got a 3D Metroid that wasn't first person, right? That is like this besides Metroid Other M. And I just think that this is what Metroid Other M should have been.
Gotcha. To go to your side of the equation with Callisto, right? Like, cards on the table start from the top, right? Dead Space Remake is a better game than Callisto Protocol. I don't think that shocks most people. Again, we're taking I was going to say a cult classic. I would just say a survival horror classic.
Yeah.
And remaking it, unless you fuck something up, you're going to, whatever. So even my things that I think are dated or drag here and there, I still think it's overall better experience than that. But what I think Callisto does better in the modern sense is give you, and I know this will piss some people off, more memorable characters. I think even, so again, or maybe I didn't mention this at the top, but in the original Dead Space, Isaac Clarke did not talk. Your character did not talk. Silent protagonist, right? Dead Space 2 and 3 enter a voice actor. I wrote it down. Gunther, right? Wasn't his name? Gunner, right? Gunner, right? My apologies, Gunner. To be the voice of Isaac, and that's great. For this one, they brought him back to then make Isaac talk in this Dead Space remake, which is great, but I don't think he gets that much to work with. I think, you know, your girlfriend, Nicole, who you're there to check in on, right? You're getting video messages from. She does better, but I think overall, like, the Dead Space story, as it gets deeper and deeper, gets crazier and crazier, gets more put on it, and starts adding in people a bit. And, you know, it's audio logs, and some people you'll see around the ship or whatever, but I don't find any of them particularly remarkable. Other, you know, I could tell you, wax on and on even before I played this one, right, of Isaac and Nicole's relationship, what it was, why it was cool, what I liked about that. And I make a joke about Altman be praised, which is a whole unitology religion thing going on in there. But then to start getting into, there was a doctor on there that was doing this, and you had this lady with you doing
It's
that.
a lot of lore.
Blah, blah.
A lot of lore.
It's a lot of lore, and it's a lot of people talking at you. And even in this game, where you're having more conversations, I feel like they are all pretty much just on the page people. Whereas with Callisto, like it or hate it or whatever, like I thought, you know, Josh Duhamel, Sam Witwer, Karen Fukuhara, right? Like I thought their performances gave their characters personality. And I think the fact that it was a smaller cast for the main story, because again, this being Dead Space made by Glenn, that being Callisto made by Glenn, like underneath there's this whole undercurrent, right, of Callisto Protocol of there is a similar, like, not unitology, but unitology thing going on of what the fuck's happening. And like, I could not tell you that narrative anymore about Callisto, really, other than like, oh, yeah, these people and they're doing the thing and they're trying to find the alpha and yada, yada. You're like, I got that part of it down, but I think the character moments and them interacting and acting together stood out more than it does in Dead Space. Even with Isaac talking, I don't think, and again, they're remaking a game, so how much do you want to tinker with it? Him talking, I don't think pushes the narrative forward where it's like, oh, wow, okay. Like, there's a lot in the Dead Space universe to get interested in and cool in. I think Dead Space 2, if they remake that, I think Isaac's story there is way more interesting for a character that we basically meet who has PTSD. It's the answer I always wanted from these kind of things of every man is thrust into a horrible situation, and then credits roll, and then it's like the second one picks up with, he is fucked up. His life is ruined because of this horror. And I'm like, that's very interesting. Whereas, you know, Nathan Drake just winks at the camera every time after he kills 500 people and then moves on with his life. Yeah. I think Callisto does a better job with its characters moment to moment and the story going on there.
I want to talk about characters, but I want to do that, Greg, after we get a word from our sponsor.
Yo, what's up? I'm Blessing, the host of KindaFunny, the show where I ask members of KindaFunny to answer questions like,
name a game where you can fight giant enemies. Name a type of animal you can play as in Diddy Kong Racing.
Name a PlayStation character who you'd want on your pickup basketball team.
Name a game genre that Greg Miller refuses to play. Good Games is not on there, but it was written in quite a bit.
and see how many audience members voted for that answer, and it usually makes them kind of mad.
Red Faction is our 30-point
Oh, yeah.
answer.
Whoa, yeah, baby.
That is our 4th most popular answer.
Whoa, whoa, whoa.
I'm still waiting for Bless to be like, just kidding.
Once again,
You guys are so bad at this game.
Catch up on the latest episodes right now, exclusively on patreon.com/kindafunny.
I agree with you entirely. Him talking is not bad, and I don't think takes you out of it at all, but I don't know how much it adds to it, because playing through it, there was another one of those things I'm like, did he talk in the first game? I don't think he did. And then I looked up, I'm like, no, he doesn't. Okay, cool. So that's something that they added. But again, it feels authentic to the experience. Like, I think that there's nothing he says or like way he like portrays it, that I'm like, this is not right. Like this isn't what it should
Yeah,
be.
no.
It just kind of does. That's where the experience overall does feel a little bit more dated, a little bit more like, all right, there's some choices here. I do like the early characters that they have, that like the people on the ship with him.
Yeah.
And I don't remember really giving a shit about them in the original. So
Fair.
I don't know if they've changed or added anything with them, but
They changed one of the characters for sure for you, but I won't get into too much of it or whatever. But like the two main characters you're thinking of that
Yeah.
are like with you for them. No, that's not. And Chen too. No, that's all normal.
okay, cool. Well,
I mean, they've twisted things here and there.
I've been
They've
enjoying
changed
it, though.
things. Yeah,
like the performances there, I feel like there's like a level of that is what I'm comparing Isaac's performance to, and I feel like he does meet that. It's just I agree. It's not like mind blowing in terms of like what him having a voice actually adds to it all, but in terms of the character of the world, I love it. I love the religion stuff. I love the story of this game. I think is awesome. Not presented in the optimal way necessarily, but I do think that that's because we're talking about the early days of audio logs and lore being delivered through all that.
That's what's so interesting about it to wrap your head around is that I would say, I like the characters moment to moment more in Callisto Protocol than the main characters in Dead Space, but the lore and the world as a character, I love more in Dead Space. I do it's rare, I feel. And again, because they do it right, but it's rare in a game where I read and listen to everything. And this is a game where I pick up that text log, and first off, it immediately appears in the world, and I can just read it right there. I don't have to go into a menu or whatever. And it's awesome to see the fall of the Ishimura, to see everything start going off. Listen to the audio logs. Again, the breadcrumb trails they give you as side missions here and have you chase down things for, what's going on. Like, that stuff's all very interesting. And I think that's way more interesting than what what Isaac is saying moment to moment with any of the people there.
And for me, my favorite character is the ship itself. And I think
Sure.
that the greatest compliment I have to Dead Space is that it is a classic. And it's a classic because it achieves being a video game. It achieves doing something special to itself. And, you think of Mario, you think of the hat. You think of Master Chief, you know what he looks like, right? There's all those vibes. I love that Dead Space has an identity. Like the suit that Isaac has, sure, I might forget that his name is Isaac all the time. But like I know what he looks like. I know like there's a vibe to the plasma cutter. Like there's just so many elements and iconic things about Dead Space that they got right. And we talk about the HUD and being the HUDless and on his suit having the health bars and status and all that just being there for you. But even just being on the ship and seeing all of the posters for explaining status and explaining your suit and explaining the using the what's it called, the where you see the
telekinesis,
the tracking thing, R3 whatever. It's like they do such a good job. I was pretty wowed by it, honestly, of how integrated the gameplay and world and story of this game just completely are. And 100%. We look at it as like, oh, it's HUDless, but it's like, no, it's more than that. Like every decision made was like very, very, very smartly designed to add to the overall experience, where the ship feels like a real place. It doesn't just feel like, oh, there's graffiti here telling you every single thing to do. There is that. There's a lot of that. I believe in it, though.
Yeah, there's also so much graffiti that's just environmental storytelling. It's not telling you something you need to know. It is people having little conversations as the world falls apart around them. Like, yeah, I agree 100% with that. I think that's a great way to put it, too. So back to Callisto, right? Like, the Ishimura is infinitely more exciting than the prison we were in, Blackwell, right? No, yeah Blackwell. In Callisto, for sure.
Yeah. So we're wrapping up Dead Space here. Any final thoughts that you have? Any final questions you have, Bless?
No, you guys killed it. Like you guys, I was not planning on going back to it soon because right now there's a lot of games that are coming out. Right, Hi-Fi Rush is calling my name at home, but you guys convinced me to go back and play it fully. Just because, like, again, it's Callisto being a game that I enjoyed playing through. Right, you guys make Dead Space sound better, like way better than it. And like, yeah, I'm down for that kind of experience. So.
Yeah, I did not love Callisto. I gave up after about 2-3 hours on that, and I was a little worried going to Dead Space. I'm like, is it going to be what I remember it being? It is everything I remember it being. Like I walked in after playing the first 3 chapters, and I talked to Greg. I'm like, is it just me, or is this like? It's really good, right? Like it's really freaking good, and it is. It's really freaking good. It is great. I haven't beat it yet, but if it maintains the level of quality that the first half of the game does, which I expect it to, I agree with you. I think this is a 4 out of 5 for sure, and I think that it being a 5 is the tallest order possible that I don't think it ever could have hit. And the difference there being, I think that Resident Evil 2, the original versus the remake, to me that can get up to a 5 because it's like, wow, you improved this thing so much. this is what I remember Dead Space being, which is incredibly impressive and good for them for nailing that. But Dead Space to me was already a classic.
Yeah. Yeah, I loved it. Had a great time with it. Like I said, I want to play it, keep playing. I started that New Game Plus, and I was like, well, I just want to see a little bit. I'm like, well, where are all these things, and where's all this, and what do I want about this, and what about this trophy list? Like, that's the best you can ask for something, especially for something that you've already played. And so, hats off to Motive for making it happen.
Hell yeah.
Oh yeah. Also, Black Iron Prison, not Blackwell. It's
Thank you.
self-correction.
Thank you.
Now, Bless, I want to get you off the bench here.
Get me
I
off
want to
the
get
bench.
those lips flapping a little bit. You've been playing another game. What review you got for me?
I've been playing Season. Season, A Letter to the Future. I played it. I finished it. And let me tell you, I enjoyed this game. I enjoyed it. On the Kind of Funny scale, I'm giving it a 3 out of 5, but it's a recommended 3 out of 5, right? If you've seen trailers for Season, if what we're about to describe about this game sounds like it's something for you, then I'll say go ahead and pick it up. I think it's a cute little game that a lot of people are going to enjoy. I do think it's hampered by a few things, but I want to start off from the place of the things that I enjoyed, right? So the game is basically, you're playing as this character who is in this world where you're about to transition to the next season, right? Everything is about to get washed away. People's memories of the world are about to get washed away, and your role in this world is to basically function as sort of a journalist, sort of an archaeologist a little bit, where you're going through the world, you are taking pictures, you are taking audio recordings, and you're journaling them, right? You're putting them into a journal to then record and put into a museum, right? So that stuff can be immortalized. And so as you're playing through the game, you are entering different environments. You spend the bulk of your time in this area called Tang Valley, which is basically this open world that you're biking through, and you're meeting a few characters, talking to them, getting their stories, and then you're also taking pictures of monuments and anything in the environment that sticks out. If you take a picture of something that is notable in the world, your main character will have a bit of dialogue about it, and then you can even take the dialogue portions and then journal about them, right? And you're designing your journal, and then you are filling up your journal based on the areas that you're in and trying to complete the different areas. And that's pretty much the whole game, and I think the concept of it is so good and so refreshing. For me, the highest compliment that I can pay this game is that in points, it felt like the world of Season, specifically the vibe and tone of it, and the way in which it feels empty, but also feels like a serene, relaxing kind of empty. Reminded me of playing a game like Eco or Shadow of the Colossus or Journey, right? I think the ways in which they realize the world, both through the design of it, but then the art direction and the art style of it, I think it's beautiful. I had such a great time going back and being like, yo, let me just ride my bike through the hills of this game and take pictures and listen to things and get to learn more about this game. I think those are the places in which the idea of those things are the places in which the game really shines. For me, the things that have brought the game down for me a little bit have been so the substance of the world isn't all the way there in moments, right? I really love the idea of recording this world and taking pictures and having those things stand out. But by the time I finished this game, I was wanting more, right? I was wanting a lot more substance, both from the characters that I'm meeting and how much lore and how much backstory they're filling in the world. They have quite a bit of things going on, but it felt a bit lacking in that sense. There's that. There is controlling riding the bike wasn't the best experience. You're basically pressing L2 and R2 and alternating between the buttons to pedal forward. And that's, at first I was like, oh, cool. Like, they're really making you feel like you're riding this bike. A couple hours into it, I was like, oh man, I do not like the feel of riding this bike, right? Where,
Did you mess with it at all? Because you can turn it off, obviously, and change it like in the settings to not have to be the pumpy whatever.
No, I didn't mess with it at all. And for me, it was even deeper than just going back and forth between that, right? I think for me, it was, there's a certain character that is also riding a bike at a point where you are following them and you're looking for them.
Oh, I know this character.
For me, it was the idea that in this open world map that they provide you with, that was a specific section where they really wanted you to navigate and go back and forth and really explore at kind of a quicker pace. And the control of the bike just did not feel like it didn't feel like it supported that, right?
Sure.
Like getting on the bike, finding your bike, turning your bike, all that stuff just felt a bit clunky to me. And
it's no Sonic Frontiers.
It's no Sonic Frontiers. But yeah, I didn't really enjoy that portion of it. And then there's the voice acting, which for me didn't live up to a lot of the good writing in this game. You know, one of the things that I really enjoyed early on is how poetic the writing is. You take a picture of a monument and your character has something oftentimes profound to say about that monument. You know, one of the things I liked is that, like, you know, she's in this new land that she hasn't been to before. She's recording what's going down, and there's a tire swing that I found at one point. I take a picture of it because I don't know, like that seems like a thing I want to take a picture of. And then she has dialogue about it, and she's talking about how, oh man, maybe they hung this tire swing to then scare off the other tires in the area because she's not seen a tire swing before. And I was like, oh, that's pretty funny. That's pretty cool. There's a lot of fun and, like, I think deep moments of writing that they put in there that is hampered a lot of the time by voice acting that just does not live up to it. Your main character, the voice acting is fine. Other characters you meet, sometimes it sounds like they're recording from a blue snowball microphone, right? A low quality microphone. Other times it does sound like they called somebody over who happened to be in the studio and were like, "Hey Bob, can you record a few lines for us real quick?" Right? It kind of gives those vibes.
And it's a heartbreaker.
Yeah.
I've played 3/4 of this game. I got pulled off for Forspoken and then on to Dead Space, so I haven't actually rolled credits. But according to Bless, I think I'm right there at the end if I just could sit down and play it. Everything he said is spot on, and I think the VO for the other characters and even meeting the other characters at times works against this thing. Like, I would much prefer it to be that it was just going around and taking the photos and doing the sounds, because we haven't even gotten to the thrust of the gameplay, I guess, of exploring. You take all of these photos and drawings and things and you build a scrapbook. And I think so many games have the journal, have the scrapbook that, you know, either you never look at or you do occasionally jump in to try to figure out where you are in the story, and it's totally an afterthought. It doesn't even feel like the character wrote it. It feels like it's just something thrown in there. Season does such an amazing job of making that the gameplay. Of you go through, you explore. I forget if I think it switches every like puzzle page or whatever you want to call it, but you need to get like 7 different things to put in. And once you do, Tim, that then unlocks, what do they call it? It's like an aha moment. I forget they call it what it is. Huh?
Eureka moment?
A eureka moment?
It's very,
kinda,
very
actually.
much, but not that. Maybe it's, I want to say, yeah, it doesn't matter, but it's like conclusion reached or something like that you can go in there and do. Anyways, once you do that, you then unlock a bunch of decorations and colors and other drawings to go in there. And I couldn't get over how much fun it was to build the journal and make it look beautiful and do all these different things for it. When, you know, Janet, of course, from PS I Love You XOXO, she started late, and I was like, oh, the game's whatever with some of the parts, but this is going to be, and she's like, I will spend hours just doing this. She started sending me text photos of what she's been building in her journal or whatever. That is so good. And so then when you have these moments with these characters where, yeah, the dialogue is the VO is so bad. Also, I think the way they present dialogue is captions. There are word bubbles that pop up, right? But they also it isn't a high quality word bubble for text on the screen, which also takes that. And so
for a game that a lot of it does look high quality.
Exactly.
Right?
It's an art. It's, you know, that you're building this journal. It's and you saw it in the trailer of how beautiful the game looks. Like, this was like, oh, that's a weird one. And then what really, really sucks is, like, there's a moment in the very beginning when you're talking to your mom before you leave. And it's a magical world, right? Like, the season is about to end. It's kind of the end of the world. You have to go out and journal this for future people to find or whatever. And one of the things, and this is the very beginning, so it's not a spoiler or anything, your mom's making you this crystal, but to do it, she has to give up memories. You have to come to her with a memory you both have. She says it goes in there. She forgets the memory, but you then wear this crystal around your neck to go have, you know, adventures or whatever. And there's all these different things in the house to get, and you bring over, and it's like, whatever. And there's one thing I grabbed and brought over, and she had this, like, monologue about it of just like this, and she's like, memory I don't want to give up. And it was so touching, and it was like, oh, damn. Like, the other stuff around it wasn't that great. This is optional, and I wish the delivery was a little bit better. And then to get into some of the other characters, there's more stuff there. It's just like, do we need, maybe your character should have been the only person that talked.
1000%.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like,
and that's the thing. And that's where I became very conflicted on this game, right? Especially when it comes to a review score, right? Where there are so many things I absolutely adored in their approach, and then there are other things where I'm like, oh man, you didn't need it. Like, you didn't have to have voice acting for these characters. You didn't have to do this. Even for what I'm talking about in terms of the content and the substance of the game, right? I wish they went one of two directions. I wish they pulled back and had way less substance than they do have, because it could just be hey, it's on the user to find the meaning in this world. I think they provide enough meaning to where I wish there was more meaning now, right? Like they hit a halfway point that I wish they could go either direction, because I do enjoy the moments where it is, you know, you go through, you're taking pictures of monuments, you're taking audio recordings of animals, of chimes, of whatever seems interesting in the world, and even if it is an element that the developers didn't consider to be interesting, right? Even if it's something that's not really quote unquote meant to be recorded, it still counts for putting in your journal, right? You just need to put enough things on the page to then have that area complete and then move on to the next thing. And so you really do get to own your own experience in Season, navigating this land that you've never been to before, and really taking in and finding your own meaning of what Tiang Valley is and what the culture of Tiang Valley is. I think that is such a smart way to do it. And I found so much enjoyment and so many moments like that, right? Where it is the mom being like, I don't want to forget this, right? Like that's a tailored moment, right? And there's only a few of those, but shit. Yeah, it's great. It's great shit, right? But there's also other moments of seeing a structure and being like, yo, that looks really awesome, and then you take a picture of it, and then your character gives you a little bit, like a sentence about it, and it's like, oh damn, that's really cool. And a lot of the stuff is really poetic and really good. I wish they let off the gas a little bit and just really let you define what this world is for you. And I think that would have maybe been a stronger choice, as opposed to giving you a lot of stuff that like that now makes the world feel emptier, you know, because it isn't filled to the brim with that stuff. But that said, right, it is one of those games where I would say it's for fans of the genre, right? And granted, you know, Greg, I don't know if you plan to go back and finish the game. I talked to Janet, and she seems like she's in a similar place of being a 3 out of 5, right? So, like, granted, if you are into this kind of game, that's not an automatic. It's gonna be a slam dunk for you, but it is one where I texted Belinda, my friend who I know does a lot of journaling in her own time, right? And enjoys narrative games and enjoys the idea of recording things like this. And I was like, yo, you're gonna have to play Season, because I think Season's gonna be your shit. So yeah, like it's a game that I enjoyed. I'm glad I played through it and finished it. I want to see what's next for Scavenger Studio. Like I think they are a studio that has a lot of talent there. But I did want a bit more from Season at the end of the day.
Yeah. Any closing thoughts on that, Greg?
I'm in torn, where it's like, I feel like I'm right there. I feel like it's like an hour, maybe. Yeah. How long was your entire place? Say?
My playthrough was about 7 hours.
Okay, yeah. So I feel like I'm right around maybe 2 off of it, and it's that thing of, yeah, why not? But I also don't feel the motivation to go do it. Like tonight, if I get home and I have downtime, I'm like, oh, we'll keep going to this New Game Plus for Dead Space. You know what I mean? Like, I'll go that way with it rather than I don't feel like I am on the. I guess my main thing is I want to know what the changing of season is going to be in the game, but even that I'm not like so interested that I feel like I need to get back to it.
What's the game that just came out today?
Hi-Fi Rush.
Hi-Fi Rush. Yeah. What's that do for you, Greg?
We had a lunch meeting, so I've seen screens of it and I read a little blurb about it, but I haven't seen enough. It's a rhythm game?
I mean, it looks like a 3D platformer rhythm action game.
It's like a rhythm character action game. I just drank some LaCroix. A 3D character action game with like rhythm game elements to it, and so you are fighting to the beat, right? You are clicking. It's on Xbox, so you're clicking X or Y for your light or heavy attack to then attack on beat. And the art style of it looks like a Saturday morning cartoon. Yeah. And the way the characters move in it reminds me of a Sunset Overdrive. Like, it has that sort of energy.
It's got that vibe to it for sure.
Yeah, I played about 30 minutes of it so far, and I'm into it. Yeah. Like, I cannot wait to go back.
I can't wait. I mean, this looks like a dream game. Like, this looks so damn cool.
It's so funny because me and you, Tim, were just talking about this, right? Because the title of the game was leaked before the Xbox developer _direct, and we were talking about Tango Gameworks and how they've done Evil Within 1 and 2, and they've done Ghostwire Tokyo. And one of the things I mentioned was, man, I would love Tango Gameworks to make a game that appeals to me. And then they announced this the next day, and I'm like, these motherfuckers, like, they did the damn thing. They're like, yo, all right, let's target Blessing specifically because this is my type of shit, and I'm all the way down for it.
It's one of those games that looks awesome, and I'm just not that rhythm guy. Yeah. So it's one of those I'm just like, I don't know, because it's only tapping buttons and there's no. Do you control the character?
You control the character. So it's an action game the way you think of an action game.
Okay.
Right, where you're going through, you're fighting hordes of enemies, you're walking around, you're doing all that stuff. But then, yeah, in the action sequences, which I assume most of the game is action. I'm not that far in it. But in those sequences, yeah, the thing is when you're fighting, you are tapping X to the beat to fight. You're tapping Y to the beat to fight, and that is like from what I've gathered so far. Like your hits are all going to land on beat, and even if you don't have like all the rhythm in the world, you still might be fine with this, because I think it is just bonus attack and bonus damage and bonus stuff that you're getting via attacking on beat, and you also have like a dodge button, right? Like think like Devil May Cry or any sort of action game. It's that kind of control.
Okay, interesting.
Let's go, man. This looks incredible. All right, we're going to wrap this up because I need to go play some Hi-Fi Rush, everybody.
Let's go.
Ain't that damn right, bless.
Oh, that's right.
Let us know in the comments below if you are going to pick up Dead Space, the 2023 remake. Let us know what you thought of Forspoken so far. Let us know if you're going to play Hi-Fi Rush. Let me know whatever you want to let me know in the comments below. What do you want to know, Greg?
I don't want to talk to anybody.
Don't tell Greg anything. But me and Bless, we're open for
Talk to me about
business.
Season. Let me know what you think of Season.
Yeah, Season. You plan on playing that? Did Bless sell you on that? Did Greg
Did I sell you? Did I unsell you?
Let
me
us
know.
in the comments below. Like I said, stay tuned. Search podcast services for Kinda Funny. We're here for you. There's about to be amazing things happening this year in 2023. We are just getting started. Thank you guys for joining us for this amazing journey. Until next time, I love you all. Goodbye.